The road to Gundagai? What's Gundagai? Where is it? And what's so special about the road to Gundagai? Hi, I'm Adventure Girl, and my channel's about adding a van to my life and travelling in it with my two dogs here, Noodle and Maloney, going to the coolest places, meeting the craziest people, having fun memories and music on the way. In this episode, I'm going to give you the answers to those questions I started with about a place called Gundagai and the road that leads to Gundagai. But first, a couple of things. A few words about the last video, and I want to introduce my dogs properly to you. Yeah. So, first of all, that first video, the last video, the only video. Okay, you have to start somewhere, don't you? Thank you so much to everyone who's watched it. So many of you. I am so happy. I do have to say though, I'm sorry for all the mistakes in it. It was my first attempt at editing and I made lots of mistakes. And I know I should have had my phone on landscape and not portrait when I was filming, but hey, didn't think of that. I know now. Unfortunately, some of the early footage will still be on portrait, so put up with it. Eventually, it'll all be landscape and I should get a bit better at it. Okay, so thank you again for watching, and if you didn't see it, go back and catch up with it because I tell you about my life, who I am. I'm 71 years old. I was living in Tasmania, and once I got my little van, my Renault Kangoo, a maxi, I'm on the road heading from Hobart, 2,494 k's up to Brisbane. And have a look at the map and see where I'm going. Okay, so got that out of the way. Now, introducing my dogs. All right, I have to say first of all that these dogs were my youngest daughter's dogs, and only when she gave birth to twins did she decide to gift them to me. And honestly, is one of the best gifts I've ever received in my whole life, because these two dogs are amazing. They're my best friends in the world, my best traveling companions. So we'll start with Maloney, since she's the closest. Maloney is part Staffy, part prima donna, and she suffers from a terrible lack of self-esteem. She needs love from everybody. So she's always getting in the closest to me saying, love me, love me. Yes, I do love you, Miss Maloney. You're a darling, even if you are pretty highly strung, very sensitive and very needy. On the other hand, Noodle, can you come up closer? Come up here, sweetie. Come and show yourself to the camera now. This is my Noodle. He is part Staffy, part Corgi. So I have called him a Storgie. Not a recognised breed yet. It was apparently accidental, but what a beautiful mix. So Noodle is totally opposite from Maloney. He is totally content, totally self-assured, doesn't need confirmation from anyone that he's the best dog in the world, because he knows he's the best dog in the world, and he also knows he's loved. And he is such a special boy, and I love him to bits. Now, just a word about his breed, because he's part Staffy and part Corgi. Some of you might know that Queen Elizabeth loves the Corgis. In fact, at one stage in her life, she had 16 Corgis. And I read that at times all 16 used to travel with her in her car. So I think that it's the royal blood, the royal Corgi blood in Noodle that makes him so happy and so content in who he is. He's his own dog. He doesn't really care about anybody else or what anyone else thinks about him. He knows he's the coolest guy in the world, and I think he is too. Okay, so we've got that out of the way. Let's get back then to the road to Gundagai. Now, as you know, I'm traveling up first of all from Melbourne, and I'm heading first to Sydney. Well, I hadn't been on the road too far when I started seeing signs for a place called Gundagai. And that instantly brought back to me some childhood memories, a special memory. I grew up in New Zealand, and growing up in New Zealand in the 1950s, there was no television, but there was radio, and radio was big. It was a big part of our lives. For example, after our dinner at night, the family would sit around, some of my older sisters perhaps doing their homework, my mother perhaps sewing, and we would listen to the radio. One of the programs we listened to was an Australian comedy series called Dad and Dave. Now, my parents thought that this program was extremely funny and used to laugh at it a lot. So, being the youngest of three girls, I did what they were doing and I laughed too, thinking it was pretty funny. But I remember that what I loved most of all about that program was the theme song that it began with. It began with a really haunting tune that went something like this. Da 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 da, and then the funny voices would start. Well, I learned that the name of that tune was Along the Road to Gundagai. I didn't know at that stage that Gundagai actually could have been a place, was a place. And actually, I also know that the place had nothing really what to do with that comedy series. But it is a small town in rural New South Wales, not quite halfway between Sydney and Melbourne, but it's actually quite near to the capital of Australia, Canberra. But it's in the middle of country, and it's very small, about 2,000 people. The road to Gundagai had been composed as a song before the radio show began. The radio show was broadcast between 1937 and 1953. So it was quite long running and very popular. I found out too that there were words to that song. The words are, there's a track winding back to an old-fashioned shack in the town of Gundagai. Well, I know from today's travel, it's no longer a winding track. You're going to see the road. And I also know what's actually at Gundagai when you get there. So, I'm going to share this with you. Come on, let's go. So here I am on the road to Gundagai. Definitely not a long winding track. It's a straight road, and this was my view for most of the way. Just a few variations coming up. One really good thing about being on the road like this is the music you can listen to. In my case, I'm so lucky I can listen to my second daughter singing her own compositions. So here's Selena Chain singing Bumblebee.
Taking the backseat, enjoying the ride, watching the views from somewhere inside. You take me for coffee, we fly to the moon. I've never seen something so beautiful so soon. Taking the backseat, enjoying the ride, watching the views from somewhere inside. take me out shopping, we buy endless time. I've never seen something so beautiful, so mine. So drive, baby, drive. Drive, baby, drive. We're moving in the right direction. So drive me, baby, drive me, baby. I know that the bumblebee really can't fly, but nobody told the bumblebee why. You take me out fishing, we catch something new. I've never seen something so beautiful, so true. So drive, baby, drive. Drive, baby, drive. We're moving in the right direction. So drive me, baby, drive me, baby, drive, baby, drive. Drive, baby, drive. We're moving in the right direction. So drive me, baby, drive me, baby.
Nearly to Gundagai. Breakfast stop for the dogs. Well, actually, yes, it's my morning tea, their breakfast. We had a long walk this morning, but they didn't get anything to eat. So now they're enjoying very much their nibbles.
A place called 4 Mile Creek. Not sure where it's 4 miles to or 4 miles from. It's extremely cold, 8 degrees and foggy mist. But it's a comfort stop. As you can see over there, 4 Mile Creek. Oh, it's 4 Mile Creek, now I get it. But is the creek 4 miles long? Anyway, it's 4 Mile Creek Rest. And it's so restful, the S and the rest has laid down and taken a sleep. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, having my coffee made in my van. You can see my kangaroo there behind the rubbish tin. Eating a protein bar, thanks to my daughter who supplied me with them before I set out. And it's all going so well. I'm so happy to be on the road, and I was going to sit here and talk about why I'm making this journey, but it's too damn cold here, so we'll have to keep that for another time. Okay, my friends?
And I've made it to Gundagai. This little town, I now know, was the scene of many historic events, both from the pre-European times with the Aboriginal Wurundjeri people and British settlement, like wild bushrangers, highwaymen, shoot-ups. A terrible flood, 1852, more than half the town drowned. Those who survived, most of them only did so because they were rescued by 2 Aborigines, which you can see in a sculpture in the town. And yet, besides all of this, Gundagai is famous because it's inspired more poems, stories, songs, plays than any other town in Australia. And all of this is in addition to my reason for remembering Gundagai, the song from the Dad and Dave radio comedy. And here they are. You can see Dad, Dave, Mabel and Mum. And you can also hear Dad and Dave every Saturday morning, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's streamed worldwide on www.goldendaysradio.com. Each episode only 11 minutes long, which is shorter than this video, which has gone on for far too long. So I'm going to stop now. Coming up in the next video, we'll be moving on, traveling in my van to a place called Yass, Y-A-S-S, Yass, and then on to Sydney. Hope you'll be with me. Thanks for watching. This is Adventure Girl. Bye.